Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you have never been here before, my name is Rita, and I hope you guys are getting ready to unwind, spend time with your families, and just kind of unplug and all that good stuff. And so, yeah, today we're going to talk about some reasons that even though I know in some states in the US there are some crazy lockdown policies and all sorts of weird things going on, but I hope that by the time we're done with this video, it might give us a little bit of feeling of Thanksgiving and maybe some hope. Anyway, I digress. So let me just get right into it. So apparently, Germany has not learned from their history because they are locking individuals down. They are requiring people to show vaccine passports in order to work, in order to go into shops and everything else. It is really terrible. This guy got fired from his job and cannot find another job because he is not vaccinated. So he and his wife are looking to move to another country.
Allowed to work anywhere anymore, really, without providing a proof of vaccination or recovery.
Well, there's also no more privacy. Like, you go into the bakery and the cashier will loudly ask you for your vaccine pass if you want to go have a cup of coffee.
So are you vaccinated?
No, like very loudly. The discrimination is terrible.
Austria, that's another place. Austria, they have completely gone all the way off. They are mandating vaccines to the point where they are charging people. They are going to start charging people $3,600. So not only are they locking down, first of all, people in Austria have the unvaccinated, the dreaded unvaccinated, have been on lockdown for over a month now, and they are going to start charging people. Yeah, that's not the only place. Canada, along with Australia, have quarantine camps, have had quarantine camps for a while. They've been working on this for a long time. I wrote on my blog. If you guys want, the link is in the description. You can check it out. Australia has been working on these quarantine camps since the start of the pandemic. So this has already been in motion. So it makes you wonder, like, what's really going on here? It doesn't make me wonder because I know what's going on. I'm sure you know what's going on. If you've been following any of this stuff, then you already know what's up, that these governments are trying to usher in totalitarian states under the guise of health and safety. Sadly, some of the citizens of, all of our countries are falling for this stuff, and they really think it's for the purposes of health and safety, but it's clearly not, because in Australia, they are quarantining people who have tested negative for COVID. They're actually still putting them in camps, not just quarantining your house. No, the police is coming, dragging people out of their houses and putting them in camps, even if they tested negative, just like this lady.
Their latest policy is to build special camps, COVID internment camps, to which infected and suspected infected people are moved. The biggest of these camps is called Howard Springs. It houses up to 2,000 inmates, surrounded by tall fences and carefully policed against attempts to escape.
I have a scooter and they ran my number plate, and they ran the number plates and seen the footage that I was with the person who had tested positive, and that's how they knocked on my door and knew where I lived from running my number plate. So then the police officers blocked my driveway. I walked out and I said, "What's going on? Are you guys testing me for COVID? What's happening?" They said, "No, you're getting taken away and you have no choice."
Right here at home, we have New York pushing people to get vaccinated. And what they're saying is, I should probably stop saying that, right? I should probably start saying Axvay or something, like Pig Latin Axvay. So anyway, even in our own country, we have places like New York and California that are trying to push the same types of policies that are going on, things that are happening in other countries. Of course, they're trying to implement in the US. So I bring all this up. Why? Because clearly there is some movement. There is a movement taking place in our country. And while in this country they're trying to get people all, focused on, white supremacy and critical race theory and all this stuff. And parents are at the school boards fighting. And right, that's a good thing that parents are at the school boards fighting against all of these things that they're seeing happening in the schools, all the indoctrination and so on. But there is a lot more happening here. That's just a diversion away from what's really going on. And what's really going on is all of these governments are all acting in concert, and they're pushing these vaccine bays under the guise of health and safety. In some countries in Europe, the citizens are even accepting a chip in their hand so that they can have their AX-based status and all of their other information right on their hand. They don't have to show it or whatever. They can just have their hand scanned.
In Sweden, enthusiastic citizens are voluntarily injecting their vaccine passports into their hands in the form of readable microchips.
So what is going on here? Let me just read something to you. So I started reading this book. It's called The Origins of Nazi Genocide, From Euthanasia to the Final Solution by Henry Friedlander. Here's what the book looks like. And so right off the bat, he starts off talking about the setting. That's the first chapter, the setting. And so the setting is talking about how Hitler was able to set the stage to carry out the end game, right? The final solution, which we all know was the extermination of Jewish people. So the setting, though, this is how he set it up. I'm just going to read a small little portion just so we, in our minds, have an idea of like what's actually happening here. What is actually happening? Nazi genocide did not take place in a vacuum. Genocide was only the most radical method of excluding groups of human beings from the German national community. And it goes on to say, the German elite, that is, the members of the educated professional classes, had increasingly accepted an ideology of human inequality. Geneticists, anthropologists, and psychiatrists advanced a theory of human heredity that merged with the racist doctrine of ultranationalists to form a political ideology based on race. Nazis created the political framework that made it possible to translate this ideology of inequality into a policy of exclusion. German bureaucratic, professional, and scientific elite provided the legitimacy the regime needed for the smooth implementation of this policy. So, when we look at all these things happening all around the world, we can see that the stage is being set, already in motion, not being set, already in motions to have a divided, clean versus unclean, if I could use a biblical reference, society, right? A society of the clean, of the purified, of the, honestly, of the religious, virtuous side versus the unclean, sinful, dirty, unworthy side, the unaxvade side. So we can already see that these class lines are being drawn based on clean and unclean in our society. And as I just read that excerpt from the book, we know that all of this stuff is in motion. It's all of what we're seeing in society as far as structurally how certain classes, elite classes, are, including the scientific class, just the scientific community, just like what the book said, are working together, working in concert to shape and change society in the way that they want. Okay, we can already see these things happening in our society. So What are we to do about these things? Us in the US, we kind of, a lot of times we see these things happening around the world. We see them in our own country to some degree, right? We're seeing it in California, in every state except for the conservative states who are trying to push back against it. The federal government is fighting the conservative states on it. All the liberal states, sadly, a lot of the people are going along with it in these states. Not everybody, obviously. A lot of people are going along with it under the guise of health and whatever. And we've seen Twitter of celebrities and others posting things, heinous things on Twitter, talking about people who refuse to wear a mask or people who refuse to get the Axvay, are somehow unclean. And so it's only a matter of time, just like in Nazi Germany, only a matter of time before, they start to more and more people, hopefully this won't happen, but so before more and more people start to feel like clean versus unclean. And then in the case of Nazi Germany, a lot of people, how do you get people to go along with, the extermination of a whole people group? How do you get people to go along with the mistreatment, the incarceration of people just because they won't get a Axvay? I mean, in Nazi Germany, there were a lot of medical treatments that were happening too under the guise of health and safety. And for people who refuse, they were put into the camp of the dirty, unclean, whatever, impure people. And so that's how you get a whole mass of citizens to, try to rise up against the unclean, is you paint them as a public health detriment to the rest of society. Then all of a sudden they get to be looked at like the unclean. Now, of course, in the US, we have the Second Amendment, right? And a lot of people are like, yeah, but we have our Second Amendment. But honestly, logistically, like in a more practical sense, what are we prepared to do? Is my question. What are we actually prepared to do? In the case of Australia, this woman was, the police came to her house and all her family could do was stand around and record. Her neighbors, I don't know if they were out there, but what are they doing? Peeking through the blinds? Like, honestly, what are we prepared to do to protect our families, protect our neighbors even? Because what happens when they knock on one of your neighbors' doors under the guise of health and safety? Are we all just going to watch out the window? Are we all prepared to protect our community? I think if we are not already living in a community, we probably should start inching toward that. That's difficult. I understand in some places are already, there's already a sense of community, but in a lot of places there aren't. So are we prepared to look out? Because if not, they can just pluck us off one by one, armed or not. You can be armed to the teeth, but if you don't have a community around you who are willing to, like a whole group of people, hundreds of people who are willing to be like, no, you're not going to drag our neighbor out because they're not wearing a mask or whatever, or, quarantine. No, you're not going to take our neighbor. No, you're not going to. No, we're going to stand for it. That is what we're going to have to do. If we are not willing to do that, then just like in all these other countries, like in Europe, I'm happy to see that a lot of people in Europe are rising up in groups. They're all coming together, no matter the political affiliation. They're coming together to push back against it because they have seen it. They know, a lot of them know their history. They know where this goes. It goes nowhere good. So they're all out there in the streets, in Australia as well, and all these countries where the measures have been have been really, really terrible, like enforced. They are standing up. What are we prepared to do? We're really comfortable in this country. I'm just wondering, like, where the tipping point is going to be for us. And to be honest, as a Christian, I wrestle with this, right? You wrestle with this idea of not being a pacifist, but you do wrestle with the idea of like, what are we to do? Like praying about these things. Like, I think that's what we should be doing. Praying about, like, what are we prepared to do? What are we called to do? Just some things I've been thinking about. But in that same vein, I do think that just bringing it back around to being thankful in this season, I do think we do still have reasons to be thankful. Obviously, we are alive. We're able to talk about these things. We're still able to spend time with our families despite the government. They're saying stuff, but it's whatever here in the U.S. It's like whatever, especially where I am in Texas. I mean, it's kind of like pretty normal. Like, people are just living life. And so, but I guess even if you're somewhere in California or New York, it still hasn't gotten to the level where you're not being allowed to go into a store. I don't think. I don't know. You can correct me on this if you're in California or New York or something. But I mean, it's getting there, but it's not quite there yet. And so I just wonder. I'm just thinking like, yes, let's still be thankful. Let's still be thankful that we're still able to at least talk to our families. We're at least still able to travel. If you're in one of these ultra restrictive states in the US, you can at least still, I don't think there are any roadblocks or anything, checkpoints set up. So you could still at least travel to see your family and leave. Nobody's dragging you out to put you in a quarantine camp like in Australia and Canada. So that is a reason to be thankful. There is still hope. There are still states here fighting back. So let's just be thankful in this season. Let's try not to let all of these things weigh too heavily on our minds and just enjoy the time that we get to spend with our families. And I wish you guys a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And we will chat soon. All right, take care. Ciao.